Hey folks, so basically this is kind of part two of my vlogs I'm doing about the ESL ESEA Season 1 Pro League LAN taking place the weekend. I'm putting out this recording July 4th weekend for the North Americans, or I guess particularly Americans, as Canada Day was celebrated already prior. Um, Basically, I already did a video talking about the group stage and then, talking about the North American teams in the group stages and things like that. So you can definitely check out that video. I went pretty in depth in a lot of detail about how the North Americans played in group play and mistakes, pros and cons, things of that nature. But here in part two, I'm just going to talk about the only North American game we got to see in the bracket stage so far, since LG was already eliminated and CLG made it straight to the semifinals after a crazy group stage, right? And so basically all there is to talk about really is the best of three that we saw Cloud9 play against Envious. Now, coming into this best of three against Envious, they had beaten them yesterday in a best of one on cash in a pretty close game. Prior to that, you rewind all the way back to Gfinity Summer, which I talked about in detail in my last video, kind of the part one of this this vlog series I'm doing on this event, where they beat Envy on Train, lost on Inferno Heavy, and then lost a close game on Cash. So basically a 1-2 series, and then obviously, even prior to that, you go back another Gfinity event, the Spring Masters 2, where they just straight up got 2-0'd by Envious in that group play. So basically, at this point now, if you do the math, when you look at the current 5 of Cloud9 versus the current 5 of Envious in head-to-head matchups, it's basically right now 3 maps in favor of Cloud9, 4 maps in favor of Envious, basically. Now, if no third map got played out in either scenario, but I guess it doesn't really matter. So it's like 4-3, right? And so I guess Cash is still like, what, 2-1 in favor of Envious. Train, I think, is just 1-0 in favor of Cloud9. I can't remember the match in the String Match 2 event. So basically, it's a pretty close, tight-knit head-to-head race here between Cloud9 and Envious, where Envious does have, I guess, a one-map advantage, so to speak. But in most recent times, the most recent events we've seen, it has been Cloud9 that's edged them out 3 maps to 2, just in the last week or whatever. So coming into this best of three, we kind of knew what maps we would see, to be honest. Like, we kind of knew that Mirage wasn't going to get played. Either Envious or Cloud9 was going to ban it. It was really that simple. No team wasted it as their first ban, however, just because it was very obvious that neither team wanted to play it. So what's the point in using that as your ban? Envious actually removes Overpass first, which is a map that I kind of knew that they might want to not play as well, and Cloud9 would be willing to play it. I think Envious knew that and knew Cloud9, even though they had that loss to VP yesterday, you can just tell that they play a lot of close rounds. They know how to play the map well, and so Envious got rid of that. Cloud9 actually removed Inferno. That was probably a really smart choice. They got crushed by Envious on Inferno the last event. Their T side just didn't seem to work out well against Envious CT side, even if Cloud9's improved their Inferno CT quite a lot, which we still haven't got to see them display that yet at international LAN, but just from watching them in NA, you can kind of tell, because they even struggled in NA in the past on that map on CT side. Now they're much better on it in the NA scene. But they ban Inferno. It's a smart ban. Envious picks Dust 2. I think this was pretty obvious that this was going to happen. I think it's considered their best map by most, though I think Envious Cash is also quite good, though they've lost head-to-head against Cloud9 the last 2 times they've played it now. But still, overall, Envious a really, really good Cash team when I think about it, and obviously good on Inferno, but that's one of Cloud9's bans, right? So Cloud9 picks Cash. I guess it's not too surprising, seeing as they beat them yesterday on it. They played them close when they played them at the Summer 1 event of Gfinity, so they knew they could play against Envious on Cash. They knew they had a good read on them on how they play, and it's always been a pretty strong map for Cloud9 as well in North American League play. And all the North American League play, Cash and Inferno have been really their big 2 maps, to be honest, besides Train, which would have been the 3rd map in this series. I guess you could have maybe seen Cloud9 pick Train instead of Cash, but when you think about side biases, it just made sense to go with Cash. Then you see the Mirage removal from Envious. It was either going to be them or Cloud9. Since Envious takes it out, Cloud9's able to get rid of Cobblestone and put it on Train 3rd map. So I think when you're going into the series, based on the maps, the way I thought it was going to go down was I really did think Envious was going to win Dust 2, but I thought that Cloud9 since they had proven they can play Envious close on Cash twice and already got a win on them one of those 2 times, I felt they had a chance to win Cash again. It was kind of a toss-up for me, and I felt that if they could win Train for sure. We've already seen them beat Envious on Train. I've seen Cloud9 play Train a lot more than I've seen Envious play Train, but that's my own fault because I don't watch a lot of the online stuff. But on LAN, I've only seen Envious play it I think twice, whereas I've seen a lot of online games from Cloud9 on Train, and so I know how they play it. I know they can be quite good on it. That's my own fault, though. That says nothing to how Envious actually plays Train. It's just my familiarity personally. And so, and given the head-to-head result, I figured, yeah, Train. So this could be a 2-1 series for Cloud9 at best. However, I did think that Envious could get to 2-0 if they won Dust 2, which I thought they would, and I thought they could win Cash. So I thought it was either going to be a 2-1 for Cloud9 based on the Cash Train and losing D2, or a 2-0 for Envious. That was kind of my thought process there. But it's not how it plays out. So we go into Dust 2. It's the first map. Once again, Cloud9 off to a slow start. And this always has happened to them these last 2 tournaments. They always kind of make this crazy comeback, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it says great things about their composure and keeping their heads right and being able to get back in a game and play from behind. That's a great trait to have. But it also just comes down to, like, having issues with slow starts, which sometimes you're not always going to come back from that, right? You got to be able to win games more comfortably, I feel like, for long-term stable success. And I think the biggest part of it, obviously, if you've been watching this tournament, is the consistency in losing to saves and ecos. Like, it happened to them on Dust 2 in this particular game when they're on T side. I think they actually won the pistol, but then they all kind of gather up in mid and they get scouted and just torn apart, and so they lose second round that way. I think they lost almost every second round this in this series. I think the only time they won a second round was, I'm trying to think. I think they won second round in the Cash map, both halves, but I think they lost it both halves of D2. I could be remembering wrong, but I just know that eco and save rounds have been a big deal. This even goes back to yesterday in the group stages when you look at their Virtus Pro game where they lost, an eco in a big way on the T side of that map. And I think it happened to them against Envious in the best of 1 series as well yesterday on Cash. So it just seems like something they need to focus down on, which is a lot of the reason why they have to make these comebacks is because they lose second round. And so it's like a double save basic situation, or double 4-spot situation. So they go from a 1-0 start, even if they do win pistol, to now all of a sudden being down 3-1, 4-1, especially if they wind up losing the opening gun round, which is something that did happen to them again against Envious on Cash yesterday, where they lost the opening gun round as well. So then it's like a 0-4 start to the half, and you can see how these slow starts can happen now at that point. But it does, like I said, say a lot about their composure to be able to make those comebacks, to once they get guns in their hands, once they get past the eco hurdle, and maybe even losing pistol round as well, and maybe even if they do drop a gun round early and they go down like 4-0 or 5-0 or whatever, they're able to keep their composure and come back. I've seen so many situations where they're down 0-5, 0-6, 1-6, and then they still come back and win the game. So that's great stuff. I just want to make a note of that initially, because that basically happens here on Dust 2 as well. They kind of go down early on T side of Dust 2 in their first half, but then they rally back. And it really comes off of, well, first, just getting their feet wet, first of all. There was a couple of times where they just weren't, they were like too hesitant, or even Cloud, like Sean just straight up said, you guys are being wusses. That's not actually what he said. He said another word, but I'll use wusses for this content. You just got to get out there. There's just, a couple of guys there at pistols. You got to be able to get out there and trade that. You got to be able to do the tactic that we want to do. You can't let pistols scare you, basically, type deal. And I think once they actually got their confidence about them, that's whenever you can see them actually working their tactics. And I mean, once again, just like in the group stages yesterday, the reads from Sean are amazing. You can tell the preparation has been quite good. Communications-wise, they are usually on the same page. There's a couple of times here or there where people get mixed up. That's going to happen. You're not going to have perfect 100% communication, every single round of play. There's going to be some people making assumptions or a missed call here or there, of course. But overall, the communication is so solid. You can tell Sean's firmly in the driver's seat here. He's able to say no. He's able to take in suggestions and manage them well, reject ones he doesn't feel is necessary for his reads and what his game plan is, accept things that he thinks might work. So basically the point is Sean's now the firm leader of this team. I've made this point before. He's not having someone call over him, which we saw in the past with Simphis. yet he still is able to accept that second voice, the suggestions that come in, but he does so well at filtering them and applying them as he feels. Like it's still his game plan. Which is good, and you can definitely see the type of input that especially Skadoodle makes. I see Skadoodle making some great insights that he uses, and Freak has some good ideas too, just being the entry fragger, being the first guy in, seeing the setups that people are playing as he goes in. He's able to relay what he thinks might be able to help him have an impact. Which, by the way, as I'll discuss later in this video, I think that's kind of one of the biggest deciding factors in Cloud9 turning things around from just a week ago to today. Is being able to get Freak in more comfortable positions, being able to have him implemented better. But more than not, I mean, the biggest thing is just him performing better individually as a fragger, which I think just comes down to him getting some confidence, him getting back in form, and him actually playing to his potential, which is something we didn't see last week. And I think that's actually big because I think that the preparation and the comms, even though I couldn't hear them at Gfinity Summer because there wasn't POV streams there, and there is now, I can just kind of tell that it was probably pretty similar. I don't think Sean went from nothing a week ago to just being super prepared, super well poised, the comms being super crisp and all this good stuff. No, I'm sure the preparation stuff was just about as good as it was a week ago. Yeah, maybe they've been able to counter strat or scout Envious a bit more. They spent a bit more time doing that this last week since they knew they were playing them, and they even mentioned how the night before, after group stages, they really focused down that night because they knew they were playing Envious in the best of three. So yeah, sure, they've put some more effort into it, but you got to think that the leadership and stuff like that from Sean has always been there since a week ago as well. And I think one of the biggest things that has changed is the fact that the trio of the team, the big trio you look at, Nothing, Skadoodle, Shroud, is performing well. And on top of that, you have now Freakazoid playing lights out CS. Nothing even looks better than he did yesterday. Shroud looks better than he did yesterday. And when you're playing against a team like Envious, who does have 4 pretty skilled players on that team, you have to have your 4 guys be able to contest that, not just 3 of the 4 if all 4 of their guys are going off. Which, in this particular instance, I feel like Shox was kind of off his game, so it was really like 4 players playing really well for Cloud9 in that trio, and Freakazoid looking much improved against a team where it seemed like Shox was having a really, really tough time in comparison to the form we've seen out of Shox, at Gfinity when they won that event. Shox looked back in vintage Shox form, and in this particular series, he just didn't look that way. And that's something else you could maybe bring up separately, right? But just getting back to Dust 2, 8-7, half, such a good recovery from Cloud9 to win the half after starting down so low. Just the way that they played it. Being able to start working A and actually getting rounds there. On the CT side, they just played well pretty much through and through. Skadoodle was struggling a bit with the op for sure. It was very noticeable in the second half of Dust 2 on the CT side, and probably on T side as well. You saw him really having issues holding that cat cross, that cat drop that Envious is so well known for. He was having to dedicate long A lot more than you would like, and when he did try to stand his ground crossover, he wasn't hitting the shots. But this is where Freakazoid came in absolutely huge, because he plays that CT rotation position quite a lot. Usually it's like Shroud is set up at long A by himself. He's kind of the A anchor, unless there's it's a spawn thing. Obviously, if Freak has the best spawn to get long A, then he will push there with Shroud, but eventually he leaves Shroud alone if he can, and then he plays that rotation position in the CT spawn between A and mid. That's usually how it works out. Whereas, it's kind of over on the B side, you're going to have yourself like Sean and Nothing is going to be kind of that rotator from the B side. So he was just big coming up, contesting those cat crosses and drops with his rotation CT spawn. Absolutely crazy stuff. It was also pretty nuts just seeing the effects Skadoodle had being boosted on that box and CT spawn, like on the pistol round, for example. Happy even dropped cat, still didn't even see him. He gets some crazy kills over the smoke. He did a gun round as well in the half. And everyone just played well. Everyone was playing good on Dust 2 for the most part. I know Skadoodle, even while I'm saying that he was kind of struggling a bit here on CT side, opping the cat cross, he still wound up dropping 20 that game and having a +2 KD, so it didn't even really necessarily matter. Then you got Shroud at 26, Freakazoid at 27. I mean, once they picked their shit up basically on the T side and going into CT, those two just played absolutely phenomenal, and nothing wasn't too far behind. So yeah, just all around well played on Dust 2. I could go into more in depth with each round and stuff like that, but I don't want to make this video too long. So going into Cash, saw him play yesterday. Cloud9 actually does struggle a lot on their T side here. They only get 5 rounds on T side in the first half, which definitely was rough, because when you compare that to yesterday when they played Envious on Cash and on the T side, they were able to get 7. So I don't know if that's just, a proper adjustment being made from Envious, or just Cloud9 once again off to a slow start, once again having issues with eco rounds and things like that. Whatever the case may be, they did eventually grind out themselves 5 rounds. And I think they honestly just got shut down a lot. Like, Kiyoshima had like this crazy play at B one round where he just got a 3K spread down, even with nothing, getting entries at mid and getting mid control and transitioning to vents. It was just like Kiyoshima just shutting them down. They just weren't able to clear out the site entirely. There was, I don't know if it was hesitancy or what it was, if it just wasn't approaching the attack properly. Whatever the case may be, there was just situations where they couldn't clear out the site. And there was a couple of 1v1 clutches that were lost in the A-bomb site, even a couple of 1v2 clutches that were lost over in the A-bomb site. But towards the very end, they were able to put up enough rounds to at least, put themselves in position to be able to put the game away on the CT side. And on the CT side, they win the half 11-2 to win the game. And I mean, good God, they just played so well. Freakazoid absolutely nuts once again with that rifle, playing that highway position, being able to defend A, being able to rotate and actually actively peek mid from highway and get kills there. Just playing so well. Skadoodle with the op, even though he was having a tough time, it seemed like on Dust 2. With the op on Cash, he looked great. I mean, he top frags for the team with 27 kills. In this game, Shroud also played well through and through, which I think is big, because Shroud's such a big part of this team. He's more actively engaged on T side, being that second guy in and getting entries for them. He is one of their big staples on the CT side, either from an anchor position on maps like Dust 2 or from a rotation perspective when he plays that type of role on a map like Cash, where he is kind of that mid rotator, plays mid very actively on the map, though he also can anchor A at times if Skadoodle's not there, or even play that vents, play that mid to B type play. He's such a big staple, and we did see yesterday against Virtus Pro, he was very, very quiet. So to have him play well throughout this series was big, because Shroud, like I said, very big part of their strategy. You can ask Sean. He really does try to get Shroud used a lot, because he relies on that aim that Shroud has. I mean, that is probably one of the most important factors in many of their tactics, except for maybe Skadoodle's op. And Freakazoid's entries obviously can be very important. But if Freakazoid fails, like he dies, he goes down on an entry into a site, it is Shroud that is the next big factor to try to make things happen, with nothing kind of being the X factor. He can definitely come in and win the round for you, but it's really Shroud who you probably rely on more. So for him to play well this entire series, here's the crazy thing. Here's the biggest point I want to make, which I already kind of made it earlier. You had all 4 players besides Sean, so the 4 guys who fit the frag, all of them were in the 20s, both maps. I mean, that's incredible. That hardly ever happens. Typically, you have like 2 guys playing really well, maybe 3 guys playing really well, but for all 4 to be firing on all cylinders, all 4 main fraggers on the team, all in the 20s, that's just something you don't see quite often. Anyway, I guess I'm trying to think here how I want to end this, because I want to put this away already, because I know it's probably drug on too long as it is. All I can really say is Cloud9's, done a good job. I would say this, though. I think a lot of people need to calm down a bit. Everyone keeps blasting flushes like you can predict the top 4 already. It was a fair prediction based on all the information that we had and all the past results. Now that Cloud9's establishing themselves now in future events we could actually anticipate that they can do something, whereas for the last few months that wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? So you can't be too heavy-handed on people's predictions that were actually pretty well educated based on the history and the results and knowing how things have gone for such a long time. maybe this is our moment now for a lot of these NA teams. Proof that we're in the right direction, proof that Cloud9 and this five can be successful and be a big team in the international scene. Surely, these could be the first signs, but we need to see how it carries over a consistent basis, not just a one-off event. I'm not saying that's what this is. I think Cloud9's looked sharp for a while now, ever since they got back from that last G Phoenix Masters 2 event, though the summer event still didn't go quite well for them. You know, they got a map off of Envious, but otherwise it didn't go as well as you would have anticipated. I think they still looked pretty good, or looked like they had the potential to do well for a while. Like I said, at least the past couple of months. So maybe now we're seeing them finally realize that. Can they keep it sustainable? That's the big question now. CLG, yeah, they just won a couple of really big maps after having a horribly inconsistent few months in the NA scene, not even qualifying for CEVO LAN and barely qualifying for ESEA in a tiebreaker. And then obviously we know their LAN history, getting maps against big teams, but then still losing out in groups or whatever. So yeah, we've seen them win 2 really impressive maps, but is that sustainable? You know, we have to see proof of sustainability before we can sit here and really overhype them and really think that we've actually made it. But I think this is great progress, and there's no denying that. And so I think North American fans can take pride in progress. But let's not trash people for making predictions that were actually pretty well founded given the history of the situation. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to tell North American fans to be disappointed or to not be proud or to not, be happy seeing their teams do well. I'm also not saying the teams aren't doing well. I've obviously spent a bunch of time praising Cloud9 just now, and I praised CLG yesterday. That's not it. I'm not a hater, but I'm just saying that you shouldn't hate on other people's predictions before the event started, given the information we had to work with, especially for some of these international guys who don't sit here and watch North American League play and see how they've built themselves up, so to speak. But I'll just leave it at that. Great event so far from Cloud9. North American semifinal tomorrow on July 4th is pretty cool. North American team's going to be in the finals is pretty cool. It's just something about ESEA, apparently, man. We used to think it was just North American teams always did well on North American soil, but then didn't do as well on European soil. The home field advantage, so to speak. When iBuyPower could beat these European teams, Complexity, C9 could beat these European teams, that ESEA lands on NA soil, but then on EU soil they didn't do quite as well. Now they're on EU soil, and they're doing really well. Is it an ESEA thing? I don't know. That's just kind of a joke on the aside. But, yeah, thanks for watching, and catch you with another video soon.